Teachers make assignments and they don't factor in, I mean, this is college, they don't factor in, oh, it costs this amount of money to buy a camera. So that's why we do check them out and make them available for everybody. And one of the things that in the stack that we've done is provide an environment for everyone to be able to use a Mac or PC. So we provide that, understanding that not everybody in the world has that kind of technology at their fingertips. Another thing that we've done in the stack is to provide a place for e-learning classes, because unfortunately in our country, not everybody has their own computer, not everybody has a camera on their computer, but some of the classes are only offered online. So we do have an e-learning studio in the stack, again, to provide for everybody. Another thing the campus provides is a service called Laptops to Go, where you can check out a laptop and take it for 4 hours and then return it. And you can do that in the library as well in at a help desk that's right around the corner from us. The library also checks out recorders, so you can do a voiceover in your home. And last night I had a patron here until midnight, and in his home he has no Wi-Fi. He has no computer that will edit video. He doesn't have Photoshop. There's another piece of software costs a lot of money. So he comes to the library, to the stack. We do have Kindles and Kindle Fires for people to check out and try and see how they like. I think that's another really nice thing that we try to do as the library. We try to help meet that need. We have an ERC on campus, National Resource Center. It's in Allen. They check out GoPro cameras, which are very nice cameras, which are like $400 for the whole piece of equipment. And they check those out for education majors in certain classes. So Wright State really tries to make it equal for all of our students to be on the same field.
I've been asked to talk a little bit about copyright, about fair use, media in the public domain, and the Creative Commons. You as a student here at the university probably have created things on your own that you may not have realized that you hold copyright to, that others cannot use those without your permission, that they can't take it, maybe re-perform it and sell it or do something else with it, without permission. So within copyright, if somebody violates copyright, there's kind of two ways that it can be approached. If it's an egregious one, it can be a legal one where you could be charged with a crime of violating copyright. But typically, most copyright things are between the person who created the work and holds the copyright and the person that has misused that copyright. And that would be a civil lawsuit between the two of them. And typically, what that boils down to is how much harm, typically financial harm, has happened to the person that created the work by the person that has wrongfully distributed the work, re-performed and sold it, made money off it, those kind of things. So typically, what's fair use? Copyright holders hold exclusive rights to their work. But we in education and you as students have the ability to use some of that work as long as you're attributing back to that creative author, that person that created it, that holds the copyright. We can use that in our works in class, and we can use that in our teaching and learning, with some exceptions. Typically, we always have to cite where we got that. Typically, we should only use a very small part of that work under fair use. The smaller the part, the better. For example, if there's a 60-minute movie and you want to use 2 minutes for something you're creating in your class, using that 2 minutes is easily covered under fair use. Using a paragraph out of a book and citing the author, you're covered with fair use of that. The only time that you really can kind of get in copyright deep water, if you will, is if you're creating something for your educational use and it's being widely distributed. If the audience of your work is your instructor, your fellow classmates inside of a class, and that's it, fair use typically covers you quite well. So that's a little bit about fair use within education. And I'll give you a resource as well that gives you a little crash course on what is fair use, what isn't fair use, where does it apply, where does it not apply. So that is a way that in the process of learning, we can use some of these works without getting express permission from the authors. Okay. Now, that all fair use ends when we start distributing it widely, like we would put it on YouTube, tweet it out, do something like that, then we're kind of going out of bounds with fair use. Another way of using to avoid copyright violations is use things that are in the public domain. Things that are in the public domain typically have been given to the public domain by the person that's created it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Also, works that are older, typically where the person that holds the copyright has passed away, and I don't remember if it's 70 or 90 years, but it's several decades. But after they've passed away, eventually their work joins the public domain and it can be freely used. So there's lots of work, for example, you may have musicians in the 1700s that wrote magnificent music. You can make copies of that and you can perform that, as it was created by that person, because it's in the public domain. So that's one way you can look for things that you don't have to worry about copyright, public domain use. Another thing that is kind of to come into play, back at the beginning I talked about how copyright happens immediately after someone creates a work. There was a movement in the 90s that basically said, but what if I create a work, I want to be generous to society and say, I've created this work, but you have my permission to perform my work, to alter my work, even to potentially use it for profit. So the Creative Commons movement arose, and that was a way to pretty much say, I've created a work, it's available for you to use, and these are the rights that I give you with it. A handy little diagram here kind of puts in summary like a stoplight. Red for copyright, you can't use it without permission, except where I talked about fair use, and you need to understand fair use. This gives some of the Creative Commons attributions where it can be used, but there are limitations. There's Creative Commons that pretty much allows you to use it fairly freely. And finally, the last one says that this is in the public domain. So this spectrum kind of covers everything. So and I kind of like that because it puts a lot in this, it simplifies things. So something that happens when you start taking Creative Commons media and putting them together, you end up with derivative works. You have one piece of work that has certain Creative Commons rights, a second work that you blended in with it that may have different ones. You've created a new piece of work that is your work and somebody else's and a third party as well. And that is covered, this gives you an idea as far as, okay, what is the license of the piece that I created? If I put it out on YouTube, or if I put it on a website because I want others to be able to enjoy it, I want others to maybe be able to make changes to it as well. How do I respect the original two authors' works I used and the generous Creative Commons licensing that they've given? So this kind of gives you a summary of that. Finally, I want to give you a couple places to go on the web where you can get works that are in either the public domain or have Creative Commons licensing. In other words, as long as you follow the guidelines, you're allowed to use these works. So the first one is the Wikimedia Commons. It includes images, sounds, videos. Almost everything here either resides in the public domain or it has Creative Commons license that allows you to use it. And if you go and search for these within this, it tells you the licensing and how you can use that. Can you license them with attribution? Can you remix them? Can you make a derivative work? And then, but you must inherit the permissions of the original author, etc. So, and another one finally is what's called the Creative Commons search, which allows you to search for various media, still pictures, text, video. With this, you can say, I want to look for things that are even that can be used commercially, or you can look for things that you can modify or adopt or build upon. So that hopefully, in a short amount of time, gives you a real quick overview, a little bit about copyright, fair use of copyrighted works, some things are what's public domain, what does that mean, as well as Creative Commons. So that gives you kind of copyright, what not to do, fair use, how can you use things that are copyrighted, public domain, things that you can freely use.